I remember when this thing was highly sought after. The hype was obnoxious. I know I'm late to the party concerning world events and whatnot, but yes, I have the Hammond Collection Gigantosaurus and Therizinosaurus in my possession. For the Carnotaurus, scalpers bought this fucker up consistently. I ended up buying 2 when Target straight dated them as a pre-order and 2 more off Amazon. I have 4 in total. No, I am not a scalper. I am not someone who buys all the supply then resells them for obscene prices for artificial scarcity, pricing everyone out in the process. I also broke one so I can understand and reverse engineer it better. I reserved 1 for my friend so I could ship it to him or give it to him in person. The last 2 will be customs and or potential giveaways. I'm not exactly keeping any promises. I know a lot has happened in the past couple of months. Yes, I got the Nanmu Jurassic Park 3 Raptor as well. I also pre-ordered the Nanmu Articulate Carnotaurus, but the Vastosaurus I'm still a little bit iffy on, which sort of makes this guy seem cheap concerning the Nanmu Carnotaurus I mentioned. I would like to finally get to the matter of the video, and I would like to present the Hammond Collection Carnotaurus. Overall, this thing is a massive turning point for Mattel. Yes, they are still haunted by the shitty, cartoony aesthetic which hinders their figures. But I am willing to argue the Hammond Collection irritators where the turning point began. Yes, I sort of contradicted myself. Unfortunately, that figure has been delisted from all retailers. Yes, I do have that figure as well. Maybe a review will be entailed. Anyways, Irritator has a nicely shaped head, a very vaguely Spinosaurid, you know, it gives that theme to it, which communicates something to you at least, you know. The tail is good, nice to see some pseudo accuracy shine through, but I want to focus on the teeth. The teeth are nice, organized, and sharpened. They did a good job here. That is why if we look at the Carno's head here, he doesn't look like he's wearing your granny's dentures, which shows they're listening and are improving. Granted, they are a multi-billion-dollar company and they don't have to listen to anybody, and they may or may not be out of touch, but those who do listen within the out-of-touch company are the real saints here, boys and girls. This thing seems like it's like a really solid on-screen imitation from the ILM model we saw from Fallen Kingdom. It isn't ugly or out of place. The skin texturing is very nice. Abelosaurid, you know, it's an Abelosaurid. Abelisaurids are known to be very spiky and rough looking. I'm alluding to the skin. They may not have ankylosaur armor or scoots that we may think of when we think of the term armor, but it's almost like a horny lizard. Did I say horny? I mean a horned lizards. The glass eyes and the pupils are still too far recessed, but it ain't an issue. The torso and tail have nice wrinkles and skin details as expected for a living creature, especially the bendy wire tail. A tiny nitpick, I think the silhouette of the creature looks a little off concerning the fact I think the tail should be a little bit longer.
Ooh, that's kind of small. Yikes.
The feet should be more bird-like, and the pubis bone as well, or the gastrale should be more pronounced. But I think it's just an art style that I may be criticizing. Then again, it may just be me having an invalid criticism. We cannot forget the feet, of course. We just can't. The feet are proportionate. They're not bird-like or theropod-like. They seem more hoof-like, akin to a farm animal, which is sort of uncanny to me. If the toes were more spread out to encourage weight distribution, then we could have gotten somewhere. But this is a solid first start.
Yeah, hi, hey, how are you? Editing pseudo here. I came across a tiny problem, and it's not really a problem. I went to the toy box recently, and I just so happened to come across the reimagined Carnotaurus. Yeah, I bought this guy recently. I don't know when I'm going to review. The point that I'm trying to get to you is, I noticed that his feet are not only the things that I want in the Hammond collection, but it's just so surreal to see the toes spread out like this, and they are more avian-like than what we got in the Hammond collection. It's just a funny little thing that I noticed that I wanted to bring to your attention. That sort of pisses me the fuck off beyond beyond belief in general. So I wanted to leave that footnote there.
Of course, the Nanmu Carnotaurus blows this thing out of the water due to more denser details and, you know, better designed feet, among other things. But overall, this thing isn't terrible to look at. It's almost proud of what it is, and it isn't trying to distract you from too many flaws. The sculpt communicates confidence. Of course, I can't forget the horns. They're the staple of this dinosaur after all. It's the brand. The neck has a weird indentation, but that's mostly for the articulation or the articulation cut, which leaves me a bit puzzled because the guy doesn't have ball joints though, almost like a D-pad like hinge that simulates a ball joint, but not quite. The hips and thighs are not as fat as the Hammond Collection Rex or the small raptors. Here, take a look at this. The pectoral region has a good amount of wrinkles to simulate tissue density. It isn't as much as the promotional art as it leads you to believe. It seems more like the render in contrast to the real actual product is just telling a different story here. There's also various wrinkles across the knees, stomach, and general torso region. The tail is essentially wrinkle central, and the indentations across the leg as well. Honestly, for the budget they went with, they used the paint conservatively. It is cheap and, well, it will chip off after a couple of rounds of play, but that's fine. It just encourages repaints. You know, look at me fucking making excuses for the multi-billion-dollar company. That's what people are doing now, actually. Earthy arids, reds, and spots of black here and there, alongside a light beige underbelly, or even white, even though the model was orangish brown, but that's about it. Some parts of the paint job abruptly stop, but that's due to budget cuts. There isn't much to go off here. I'm not a fan of busy paint jobs or overly complex aesthetics. I prefer simple colorations. It feels more natural to me. A small gripe would be the difference between the package art on the back and the actual product. This is more white across the shoulder region, the stomach, and the neck. Also, if we were to look at the tail, you guys know that these toys are usually not made via injection molds, right? Rather, they're cheaply produced using two halves. You can see the seam lines running down on all Hammond Collection figures. The base of the tail looks like it was painted one way, while the other side didn't get as a good of a coat, and you can see here mostly.
Concerning the articulation, we're going to be starting off at the head. When you open the jaw, the double hinge mechanism will occur because you simply cannot use the lower jaw independently. The reason being is because if you try to do that, you'll notice that on the bottom here, there's a bit of a sizable clearance issue where this is a noticeable trend when it comes to all Hammond Collection figures, and arguably anything beast of the Mesozoic, because the moment you try to lower this jaw, there's going to be a clearance issue and you simply cannot go past it. The only way for you to do anything would have to be sort of to break this mechanism. So that is a design flaw, but the reason they do this is so they can give you the illusion of more articulation than there is actually present. There is no ball joint that I can detect anywhere. However, there is a D-pad like mechanism that spans all across the neck. For example, this is what I mean. Watch. I could go left, I could go right, I could go up, and I could go down. That seems pretty smooth, right? Including the base of the neck. I could do relatively the same thing. I could go left, well, not much, it's a bit rigid. I could go right, and I could go a little bit down, well, sizably down, and up. Specifically, the up and down portions are really good, but the only type of joints that I could think of off the top of my head that would recreate this or even allow this would have to be hinge joints. Now, here is some evidence to support my claim. Here is the Hammond Collection Blue, right? It's one of the best Velociraptors out there. A review may or may not be coming soon, but the point is, here, look. Here's a hinge joint assembly. Now look at the range. Yeah, look how up it could go, and look how down it could go. Here's a neutered Hammond Collection Ceratosaurus. Has a bit of a ball joint of sorts. It cannot look down as much, but it can most certainly look up much better, due to the reason being, it's a ball joint of some kind. Hinge joints allow for more linear ranges than fluid organic movements. Going back to the Carnotaurus, this neck mechanism is very rigid. Yes, I do admire the range that it can look up and down. However, it tends to get hindered when you try to move it side to side. Notice that rigid mechanism. Notice that rigid movement when I go like this or like this. Moving down to the shoulders are on a hinge joint, which is pretty obvious as evidenced by this joint right here. They can move upwards and swivel just as much. However, the swivel is relatively tight. Same thing with the elbow, even though, which is weird because Carnotaurus is nothing but an elbow down here. There's no reason for it to have shoulder joints as well, but you know, more articulation, I guess. There's a lack of a waist joint, but the reason they do that is very interesting. The Hammond Collection T-Rex was the only toy that they produced with a waist joint of some kind within the articulated line. However, it began to sag because the waist joint was considered a point of weakness right here, where if you anchored more stuff here, things will inevitably begin to have a bit of a weight distribution issue, causing it to have the sagging that I mentioned previously. This is also evidenced by the base of the Mesozoic T-Rex, where the larger a toy is, the more weight issues, the more torque of some kind will, not necessarily torque, but something similar to it, will force it to just sort of just sag like this. Now, this bad boy could spread a decent amount, as evident by what you can see here, and there's a really good amount of wrinkled detail in there if my camera could get that. Look at that, Carnotaurus grundle. I am never saying that again. The legs could move 360, but I don't exactly know why you would want to do that. Very limited hinge joint, specifically on the knee. I mean, this is the maximum it could go. It could like spread out and it could bend it this much, but the reason it does that is because if you do this, the sculpt will obviously break. Not so much here for the ankles, or at least what one would call an ankle, or the heels of the feet. And then there's a hinge joint here, and then there is another hinge joint down there. Now let's try to zoom in on that one more time. All right, there's two separate hinge joints right here. The first hinge joint on the top right here does this. Whoops, almost moved the camera. And then the second hinge joint moves up to do this. And the feet are obviously on a Marvel Legends hinge joint pivot, where it can, of course, pivot, and it can move up and down this much, which is pretty neat. Moving down to the base of the tail, made of solid plastic here. As you can see, it can move this much. And the end right here is where the action's at. This nice little beef jerky, this little sausage right here. Look at this. Look how veiny that is. Look how wrinkly that is.
That's a peanut.
That's right. You can take that out of context. You can flip it if you want to. Yeah, look at that. That's a nice bendy wire. That's a very nice bend. It's a respectable bendy wire. It's not too stiff. It's not too rubbery. It's not too flaccid. This will slap you. Overall, the articulation on this guy is not too bad. It's pretty serviceable, and there's not really much to go off about, really. But I wish they sort of kept the waist joint on the much smaller to medium theropods like the Carnotaurus here. And frankly, I just love the sort of play that you get with them. But the only drawbacks you have is specifically the neck region and the range specifically within the legs as well. Those need to be, well, sort of addressed. But if you know anything about Mattel, they never really go back to fixing anything, right? They sort of just keep on going forward and move on at times. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's something that we have to address with what we have.
All right, this is usually the segment of the video where I talk about the boxes and accessories. It's a Hammond collection figure. There's not a base, there's not any additional limbs like what you get in Beast of the Mesozoic. It's just the bare toy. There's nothing really wrong with it. And I'm going to be using, of course, one of the spare Carnotaurus, Carnotaurusi, whatever.
Whatever. Who gives a shit?
One of these spare Abelosauroids that I currently have on me right now. The one that I was generally talking about through the entirety of the video would be this guy right here, which I have. But, taking a look at the box itself, you have a beautiful render. The tongue is a different texture. The teeth are a little bit sharper. The eyes are actually painted, even though I feel like they're more 2D than they actually are. The neck has a better silhouette. I'm not going to lie there. General description of the back, more promotional images here and there, and the smaller Hammond collection figures that never seem to be available in store shelves whatsoever, like the Dimetrodon, Owen, and Blue here. Size comparison time, here he is next to the previous reviewed Dracosaurus. I didn't want to do all three of them, so one just should suffice. I mean, he is pretty chunky. I mean, take a look at this absolute monster. Are they the same scale? Who knows? I can't exactly be too sure about anything at that point, but he is definitely gonna, just judging from him, he's absolutely menacing. He's like one of those weird inbred bulldogs that just so happen to, or pit bulls that just so happen to like have the thirst of blood for toddlers and stuff in between. Anything small that moves even. The new 93 remastered or reimagined Demon Carnotaurus, he's pretty sizable. I'm not gonna lie. This Demon Carno is pretty menacing. I sound like a cornball. I'm not gonna lie there. but there is an actual size difference. They definitely seem to be on the same size class. However, I suspect, let alone at this point, I feel like the rubber Carno here is much, or slightly bigger, I suppose. A review may be coming soon on that one, but I'll leave you posted. And compared to one of the greatest dinosaur toys ever manufactured in the history of man, child, man, or freaking women, children everywhere, absolutely, just listen to me. This thing is amazing. You know, I have to review this guy. Even so much so, here, let me get some measuring tape for this comparison. Take a look at this. Oh yeah.
That is not how you use a tape measure, retard.
Look at this. Look at this bad boy, huh? We're looking around maybe a solid 20, 26 inches, you know. Too small. But I hope I have some kind of like consistent size chart, you know. Not exactly small, but just something similar. Or maybe, you know what, fuck it, why not? Let's just throw in something small in there. No, you're not seeing things. The Guanalong has definitely an amputated foot. I'm telling you, this toy and the toys like it have very delicate ball joints that if the foot, remember when I warned you in the original review, the foot will inevitably disappear if you are not careful with this thing, and this thing just dematerialized. And the base of the Mesozoic juvenile T-Rex, also known as Nanotyrannus, also known as the ugliest son of a bitch I've ever seen reincarnated into a piece of plastic of a toy. All right, what is the final verdict? What are we looking at here, folks? 7 out of 10. That's the best I'm going to give it for this guy. You know, he is pretty well sculpted. You know, he has like the amount of density of scales and wrinkles are where they should be. The articulation is not the worst. The paint could use a little bit more work, but then again, you know, for 30 bucks, it's not too terrible. 30 bucks, you could barely get a 1/6 piece of Mesozoic Velociraptor. So this is something I recommend you getting. It's a good collector's item. It's a good action figure. It's a good talking piece. It's just something that is meant to light up the living room for far better or for far worse, you know.
What the fuck, y'all? God damn!
Probably the latter, but I do recommend getting this guy no matter what, you know. It's just unless he gets scalped again, and you have to try to negotiate with retarded, batshit insane Facebook Marketplace, eBay, and or Mercari and or third-party resellers who try to make our hobby more insufferable. So yeah, that's pretty much for this guy, and I'm like to sincerely apologize for the delay, the hiatus, and everything in between. And thank you, goodbye, have a happy holidays or whatever you believe in, and good day now.